So hello people, welcome to our webinar to Friday night CWB live. Yeah. My name is Jordana Mazarotto. I'm the current president of BRAZ-TESOL Curitiba chapter. Actually, we've very recently changed the whole board. Yeah. The former board had been around for a long time. Actually, since 1998, we are one of the oldest chapters in Brazil. Yeah. So first, we would like to thank the former chapter for trusting us with this mission, and we hope we can carry on the legacy, right? And let me introduce you to our new board. So we have me as the current president. I've been involved with the BRAZ-TESOL Curitiba chapter for, I guess, 6 years now, yeah. We have Ramon Moravsky, who is our vice president. Unfortunately, I think he's being held up at work, but you can see his face there. Rafaela de Almeida, our second vice president. Gabi Tadano, our secretary, and Clarissa, sorry, never know how to pronounce your last name, Clarissa, Growalski?
Growalski, it's as easy as it can be.
Okay, who is our treasurer, yeah? So people, we have very carefully planned this webinar, yeah? We hope you enjoy it. I apologize for the mistakes I make here with the sharing of the screen and everything is new, right? So we are all learning together, but we are very happy to have you here. Before we begin, let me tell you a couple of things, some things to bear in mind. If you want to use the chat room, for example, feel free, yeah? Just make sure you change the configuration at the bottom to all panelists and attendees if you want everyone to see, or just us, okay? However, if you do have any questions regarding the sessions themselves, I'd like you to post those questions in the Q&A box, which is located at the bottom of your screen next to the chat room, okay? We'll be looking at those questions, we'll be analyzing them at the end of each session, which will last 45 minutes. We'll select some questions to ask the panelists, yeah, and they're gonna answer those questions. We'd like to thank, of course, our sponsors. Yes, we have our national sponsors there, BRAZ-TESOL national sponsors, who are always supporting us, making these events possible. Also our local, yeah, or webinar local sponsors on the right-hand side, people who have very kindly agreed to share some prizes with you today, yeah. We will be having the raffle at the end, so don't go anywhere. Without further delay, people, let me introduce you to our first speaker, yeah. André Hedlund is an Edify mentor, Chevening alumnus, so he got his master's at Psychology of Education from the University of Bristol. He is, of course, a teacher, a consultant. He is also president of Partners of the Americas Goiás and member of BRAZ-TESOL's Mind, Brain, and Education SIG. Yeah, our very nice SIGs. His blog, yeah, has had nearly 30,000 accesses in more than 140 countries. If you haven't checked it already, people, I advise you to do so because he's got an amazing blog. Follow him also on social media because he posts some amazing things. Andrea, would you like to talk a bit about yourself before we start? Because we're actually early. I'm nervous and I played the chat box here and I guess I got a bit fast with, with the
It's the adrenaline.
We're going to talk
oh
about that.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Thank you very much, Jordana. Yes, I can talk a little bit about myself. But first, I'd like to say it's such an honor to be here. This is the very first event after the new board, right? Or is it the first at all?
It is the very first, yeah.
Okay.
Or otherwise, because we put the board together in the beginning of the year. We had planned an event for May, right? But obviously it didn't happen. So here we are, yeah. But we're very excited with this new challenge. We're very excited to carry on the mission, and obviously
wonderful,
our best.
Wonderful. So I'm feeling really privileged to be here. I really like to talk about one of my greatest passions, that's neuroscience. And, you know, any chance I have, when people ask me to do that, I'm always happy. I celebrate after that. So I have a glass of wine with my wife and talk about how it went. And it's a pleasure, because I think this is really necessary. I think it's one of those topics that we can't really get enough, you know, of, because we have to understand how the brain works, at least the basic principles, so that we can apply some of that knowledge in the classroom. So I'm going to be talking a lot about what I did last year as a master's student at the University of Bristol. So I'm going to mention a couple of things that I actually researched for my dissertation. I haven't published yet. I have to this year, hopefully. And I want all the participants.
So we're getting some inside look into your dissertation. That's great.
Most definitely. At least, you know, the big topics, the main topics of my dissertation, not in detail because I still have to publish, but anyway, I hope it helps.
Let's keep it quiet.
Exactly. And so I think my mission here is to at least inspire people to do a little more research about the brain, to learn a little bit more about what actually goes inside our brain, the most complex organ we have when we are in the classroom learning, and also to realize that what I'm going to tell you is not a fixed recipe for how you should teach, because there's no such thing, you know. It's a very complex environment. You have a lot of variables to pay attention to. So it's impossible for me to say, the brain works like this, so you have to teach like this, and then everybody's going to learn. But then it's useful if we have a framework to refer to, and then apply some of the things that we've known for decades and some of the things that we are finding out along the way, right? So can I start sharing my screen?
For sure. Yes. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation again, André. The floor is yours. Yeah. Thank you. And
thank you.
Carry on.
Wonderful. So let me start sharing my screen here. And please let me know if you can see it. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. And I will try to check the chat box as you know, as we are doing this, as I'm actually delivering the session, but we're going to have a Q&A moment at the end. So if you want to save your questions till the very end, that's okay. But you know, sometimes we forget, because that's what the brain does. And if you want to ask them right now, it's okay. So thank you, Jordana, again. Thank you, everybody on the board, especially Gabi, who reached out to me. Thank you, Gabi, for bringing me here. And I wish you the best of luck in this new endeavor. And it's going to be wonderful to have another chapter around for us to discuss beautiful and wonderful practices for us to learn more. So I'm going to be talking about neuromyths, a buzzword in ELT and education nowadays, right? And how does the brain work, and what does that mean in the classroom? I'm afraid this is a very difficult question to answer. So I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to help you start answering the question with me. And there isn't a final solution. There isn't a final answer to this. So that's why we have to keep digging, have to keep doing research. And I'd like to start with this beautiful image of Greg Dunn's and Brian Edwards' brain. So I could tell you that around 50, 60, 70 years ago, we didn't really know much about the brain.
But because of brain injury, because of recent developments in technology, especially neuroimaging technology, nowadays we know a lot more, and we know so much more that this image is possible. This is an incredible image that was developed by those two guys, and they used a technique called micro etching, right? So basically, what they did, they had gold and they made ridges, like they painted on a very large piece of paper what neurons should look like. And then they used a computer and artificial intelligence to simulate how they connected. And then they made this with gold and light, basically. So it's wonderful. I'm going to show you a video later, or just send you the link so you can watch it, because that's how beautiful the brain is. Now, this is the sequence we're going to follow. So what's a neuromyth? I'm going to test your knowledge on neuromyths. So I'm going to ask if you know whether this is a neuromyth or a neurofact. How many neuromyths are prevalent today? Basic principles about the brain, very basic, and in, I'd say, very simple language for everyone to understand. The 6 dimensions, that's about my dissertation, and conclusion. So hope you are ready. And of course, Marcio, I know Marcio is watching us. I just have to say hello to my wonderful mentors, my colleagues from Edify. And we have Aline, we have Fernanda, Carol, Marcela, Raquel, Daniel, Marcio is here. Are you there, Marcio and Carlos? Thank you very much. I promised I was going to say hello. You guys are awesome. You rock. I love you. Thank you very much for being here. So what's a neuromyth? I'm going to check the chat box right now. Does anybody know how to define a neuromyth? What's the best way to define a neuromyth? So let's see if you guys write anything on the chat box. Okay. Anything? I think I'm not getting the answers. Can you hear me, everyone?
Would you like me to read the answers to you, Andre?
Yes, that would be great. For some reason, I cannot see the answers. Let me check if they are in a different window or something.
They are
okay, now I can see them. Yes,
okay.
Thank you. Now I can see them. Okay, maybe something that the brain builds is something true. Okay, beliefs about learning, a set of beliefs that have not been proven. Great answers. Things about the way the brain works that are not true. Yeah. Preconceived ideas like the 10% of use or something like that. There are things we believe are true about the mind. All great answers. So everybody knows misconceptions on how the brain works. Perfect answers, everyone. So let me give you the official answer according to OECD. So it's a misconception generated by a misunderstanding, a misreading, or a misquoting of facts scientifically established by brain research to make a case for use of brain research in education and other contexts, right? So I got this from OECD because it was mentioned in a paper that I read that was written by one of my professors. And basically, it is based on scientific evidence. You know, we know a little bit about the brain. We know how the brain works a little bit. We have some concepts and notions about, you know, what a lobe does. So what is the temporal lobe? Where do we process images in the brain and things like that? But then when we generalize that, we do it in a way that it's not actually true, or we oversimplify things, and then it becomes a neuromyth, okay? And neuromyths are very widespread, actually. According to the research I've been reading, there's actually lots of research all over the world. There was one in Latin America. Brazil was not part of it, but Peru, Argentina, Colombia, Nicaragua, Mexico. There was one about teachers in Portugal. There was one about UK teachers, Chinese teachers, Spanish teachers, you know, a bunch of different papers everywhere. And they kind of came to the same conclusion. But before I tell you, let's test you. shall we? All right, so now, if you have a QR code reader, I'd like you to access this Google form that I created for you. It's actually very simple. It shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes to answer the questions. I have 8 questions, neuromyth or neurofact. So try to use it. If you cannot do it, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen right now, and I'm going to post the link for you to access, okay? So I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes. So here's the link. So it should be in the chat box right now, okay? And to make things fun, I'm gonna use my Pomodoro timer to check, you know, time you like. 2 minutes is good enough, right? 2 minutes. Okay, somebody wants to see the QR code again. Yes. So let me just share my screen once again. Done, done, done. Okay. Awesome. Oh, yes, I can see the responses now. We have 25. Wow. 30 now. Excellent. $44. Wonderful. You guys are really fast. Great questions. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Márcio, thank you very much. Good to have you here. Are you done? You have like 30 seconds. Wow, we got 69 answers now, 68 answers, 9. Amazing. Okay, so I think my Pomodoro timer is not working very well. How about now? Okay, so time's up, folks. Let me share my screen with you again. So I'm just gonna show you what you answered here. So let's take a look. We only use 10% of our brain. That's a neuromyth, according to 73% of you guys. Individuals learn best when they receive information in their preferred learning style. That's a neurofact, according to 61%. Kids are faster language learners. So neurofact for most people. Learning is more effective when we space out our studies. 69 said it was a neurofact. Our brain shuts down when we sleep. So that's a neuromyth, according to 94%. Bilingualism delays neurodegenerative diseases. So 75% of you guys said it's a neurofact. Right brain people versus left brain people. So you said 63% said it's a neuromyth. And we can't really separate rationality from emotion. So 52% said it's a neurofact. Are you happy with your responses now? Because we're going to correct, huh? And I'm super excited because you might be a little shocked or at least a little surprised, right? Okay, so let's correct one by one. I'm not going to have a lot of time to go over why they are myths or facts, actually. But I will show you the resources so you can read on your own. I'm going to try to cover as much as I can, but you can read some of the blog posts that I have. And I also have the references at the end, okay? So let's go back to the presentation right here. Can you see my slides, everyone? Just let me know, okay? Yeah, right? Great. Yep. So, wonderful. Let's start. The first one I asked, we only use 10% of our brain. Is that a neuromyth or a neurofact? Huh? It's a neuromyth, guys. Come on. Why would we only use 10% of our brain? But this is very widespread everywhere. Actually, I wrote a blog post about it last year because there was a movie with Morgan Freeman and Scarlett Johansson. Remember that movie, Lucy? So did you guys watch that movie? That Lucy was this incredible human being that could, remember that, Vinicius? He said yes. So that's a neuromyth. You cannot do that. Even if, it's really hard to say how much of our brains we can use, what percentage of our brains, but we're using many parts of our brains at different times and, all together synchronized. For example, I was just drinking a glass of water. So, just because I'm touching the glass, my somatosensory cortex in my parietal lobe is activated because of pressure. I can feel the pressure, the texture, the temperature. I'm moving my hand, so my primary motor cortex in my frontal lobe is activated. I'm talking about the glass, I'm looking at the glass, so my temporal lobe is activated because I'm using language. I'm looking at the glass, so my occipital lobe is activated because of visual processing. Everything is going on at the same time. And, my cerebellum is coordinating all the movements and everything. So this is amazing. If you could see my brain inside an fMRI machine right now, you would see that many areas are actually activated just by holding a glass of water and talking about it, okay? Which means we don't use only 10% of our brains. And this might have some negative, developments, let's say, or impacts in how we see the learning process. You might think that, if students only use 10% of their brains, maybe this is too hard for them, or maybe we shouldn't assign homework, or maybe, that's the most they can do, or something like that. So this is actually pretty harmful if you think about it, right? Somebody mentioned Bradley Cooper and Limitless. Yes, I wish we had that pill, right? What about this one? This is probably the most controversial. So get ready. Most of you said, yes, this is a fact, right? So let's see what you guys say now. Is this a fact or a myth? Yeah, myth. Yes, actually, folks, this is a myth. And I am sorry to tell you that, because this has been propagated by a lot of institutions, including Cambridge, and it has to do with, multiple intelligences and some of the earlier models of visual, auditory, kinesthetic, reading. Actually, there are many different types of learning styles, categories, and everything. Many, really, different authors and everything. And the assumption is that if I'm a visual person and I'm taught in a visual way, or I receive information visually, that means I'm going to learn better. It's going to be more effective. This is actually not true, because learning needs a lot more to happen. It's not just about visual information. You cannot really separate things, Whenever I'm looking at the teacher and listening to them, there's a lot of things going on inside my brain, right? And the one way you can test that is, okay, let's get a bunch of auditory people and teach them using auditory information, or teaching them in a way that doesn't require pictures, images, or anything like that. And they should learn well enough, right? And then we compare the group of auditory people learning something else with visual cues and auditory information. They learn better because they're doing something called dual coding, okay? So this is a myth. This can be a very dangerous myth, and I'm going to talk about it later. I'm going to ask you to tell me your opinion, because a lot of materials were produced based on this myth. We have actually labeled our students and ourselves because of this myth. And then it might be dangerous in a situation in which you think your student is auditory, and then you don't bother, making beautiful slides with images or bringing flashcards or whatever, because why bother if my student is auditory, right? And it's not about predominance either. I wrote something about this, so if you want, you can read it. It's on my blog. I also have, I think, probably the latest newsletter of BRAZ-TESOL has an article that I wrote about that. I'm not saying you should just throw away everything you do because of the learning styles theory, okay? I'm just saying that there is no such thing. Everybody's visual and auditory and kinesthetic, and some things can be taught in a very visual way, some things cannot be taught in a very visual way. And if you do one of those tests and you're visual and then you receive information visually, that doesn't mean you learn better. And we have a lot of evidence to support that, okay? Okay, kids are faster language learners than adults. Is it a fact or a myth? I'm curious. So most of you said it was a fact, right? According to, and then let me explain before you crucify me here. According to a lot of research, it's actually a myth because it's not really learning faster. It's not about how fast you learn, right? If you think about it, let's say an adult starts learning now and a 7-year-old starts learning now, and in 2 years time, you test how much grammar and vocabulary they have learned. So who learned more? I'm pretty sure, or not pretty sure, but I would guess maybe the adult learned more vocabulary because they're using a mechanism that we call explicit. They're using what we call declarative memory more than what kids normally use. They're using their unconscious bits of the brain. They're using their implicit or non-declarative memory, right? So kids are better and faster acquirers of the language, and adults are better learners of the language, if that makes any sense. And of course, you can read all about it on my blog, and I'm very sorry, I'm shamefully promoting my blog here because I have a lot of references there, so it's easier for you to just go there and get the references, okay? All right, so far, so good. Time for a brain break. I love to use brain breaks. I'm gonna do something very silly with you. I'm actually gonna show you a couple of facial expressions, and I want you to use the chat box to tell me what emotion I'm feeling. Did you get that? Say yes if you understood what I meant, okay? Yes, 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 wonderful. So now you can see my big face. So I want you to use the chat box and just type what I'm feeling right now, okay? Come on. All right, yes. Anger, well done. What about now? Yeah, well done. What about now? Happiness, joy, wonderful. And this one? Scared, surprise, good. This one is a little harder. Disgusted, well done, very good, everyone. So basically what I did, so this is a theory, which is also a neuromyth, that we can express, that we have universal emotions that can be very easily identifiable by looking at someone's face. We do have some primary emotions that take place in the brain. So if you watch, what was the name of the animated movie that I forgot now? That was about emotions. It was a Disney movie or something. Inside Out, was it? Okay, great. Yes, Inside Out, that was the one. So remember that you had the different emotions and everything. So there is some truth to that, but we can actually fake our emotions. So just because I smiled, it doesn't mean that I'm happy, right? Just because I did like this, it doesn't mean that I'm disgusted. So it's really hard for us to claim that there are universal emotions that that happen in the brain and then people cannot fake them. We can actually do that. Okay, so going back, this is a brain break. And why do I do brain breaks? There's a theory behind brain breaks, and it's just for your brain to take a little rest, for you to be able to take in more information, dump that information from your working memory systems into your long-term memory, so it can start consolidation earlier. And you know what? Since you're watching me, I'd love if you could actually now, it's part of the brain break, can take a picture of whatever you're doing, your computer or just a screen shot of your cell phone if you're watching us on your cell phone, and then you can post it on your social media. Use this hashtag so that I can follow you, because then I can send you a lot of cool stuff, okay? So use this hashtag EDC Rocks. And you can also follow us on MBE Brazil, okay? And of course, my blog and my Instagram account. All right, that's your brain break. Now let's carry on. I also wrote about this. This is one of my favorite blog posts, by the way. I think that after you read this, you start using brain breaks and you'll see that for some reason, your lesson becomes a lot more interesting just because the brain works in that way, okay? We need to take a break now and then. We normally already do that, but I'm talking about more systematic breaks. Now take a look at this. Learning is more effective when we space out our studies. So myth or fact? What do you think? Huh? Very interesting. Definitely, I love Pomodoro technique. Wonderful. This is most definitely a fact. This is something we should be using much more often. It has to do with spaced repetition or delayed practice, delayed retrieval. So it takes time for us to consolidate memory. Just because you were exposed to something, it doesn't mean you learned it. So you have to go back to it many times before you can actually claim, you know what, I really know that. So think about homework, for example. We need to wait for our students to go home, sleep, consolidate memory, and then maybe homework should not be done on the same day they got the input, right? Because if we do that, we didn't give them time to start consolidating that information or a bunch, different pieces of information that we gave them. So there are some things that can actually be transformed into practical things in the classroom if we know them, right? I wrote about that too. So take a look at this. This is another cool blog post. You can, of course, you'll get access to everything later. I'll send you the link so you can download the PDF and then you can follow my blog, okay? Now, we are coming to the end of your test. What about this? Our brain shuts down when we sleep, huh? And thank you, Marcio, for sharing my blog post. No way, myth. Yes, no way, exactly. No way, our brain is very active when we're sleeping. I didn't write anything about that yet, so I brought this reference here. Pierre Marquet, a French researcher, actually wrote a very interesting paper on that. So what we do when we're sleeping, we're actually putting together and reenacting things that we saw during the day so that we can consolidate memory. So dreaming is actually very important. There is a neuroscientist in Brazil, his name is Siddhartha Ribeiro. He wrote a book, O Oráculo dos Sonhos or something like that. And he talks about the importance of dreaming and everything for memory consolidation and learning, okay? So if you're not actually sleeping very well, you might be somehow damaging or hindering your learning process in a way. Yes, Marcio said that. I wish I would sleep better. Yes, I think everybody. Siddhartha is from Natal. Exactly, Bruno. Thank you very much. Not only learning, right? For everything. Yeah. The picture reminds me of Joey and Ross napping together. That's actually going to help you remember this. Thank you very much for sharing, Thiago Santos. Very good. Now, yes, when posting on social media, listen to Gabi, use hashtag BRAZ-TESOL CWB and BTCWB Live. Thank you very much. And bilingualism delays neurodegenerative diseases. Neurodegenerative diseases, that's a hard word to pronounce, right? Can you say that 4 times in a row? Neurodegenerative, neurodegeneratives. It's hard. It's like a tongue twister, right? This is actually a fact. I haven't actually written about that properly, but Costa, Sebastian, Galles, they have written about that. And according to a meta-analysis that they did, we can get anywhere between like 4, 5, even 6 years more. So it's not going to cure your dementia, but you're going to present the early symptoms of your dementia 5 years later. How about that, huh? And then I always say the same thing. Everybody asks me, so if I know more than 2 languages, additional languages, do I get 5 years more? Or if I know 3, do I get 15? Or it doesn't work like that. But if you are multilingual, you can get yourself an extra 5 years, okay? This one is cool. Right brain people are creative and left brain people are analytical, logical. Let us not forget about epigenetics. Yes, my wife is an expert in that, Thiago. I have learned quite a lot from her. Epigenetics, definitely. That's, your ancestors play a role on many things because of, some of the genes were activated before, and that's hereditary, right? Because of, environmental stimuli. That's perfect. Thank you very much. So this is definitely a myth. And yes, it's definitely a myth. So this is about brain lateralization or specialization. We know that some functions are actually sort of assigned to one side or the other when we are developing our brains. And we know, for example, that language is some aspects of language. That's what people don't get right. Language is mainly processed in the left temporal lobe, but some aspects of language, like intonation, for example, is processed in the right hemisphere. So people who have some kind of aphasia, they can still sing. So if they cannot really talk normally like we do, but if they do it singing, they can actually talk normally, except that they were singing, right? Because that's processed in the other hemisphere. Most of what we do requires both hemispheres, to be honest. So there is very little difference in many functions. So language is probably one of the only functions that has a little bit of difference in what happens in the left and the right hemisphere, okay? So this is bad because if you classify your student as a right brain student, so he's artistic and creative, you might actually believe that this is based on scientific evidence, and then you might actually label the student and, I don't know, maybe you say, this student will never learn math because they are right-brained or something like that. This could be bad. This could be harmful, okay? So there are some neuromyths that can cause a lot of harm, okay? I also wrote about that, so you can check my neuromyths and potential classroom implications. This is a whole series of neuromyths that I wrote, and it was actually in very simplified terms. Oversimplification is not great for neuroscience, for science at all, because things are complicated. So it's never something is something. It's more like evidence suggests that this is what happens based on the sample that we studied. And we studied that sample in a laboratory and with very superficial or artificial conditions. So it's very hard for you to simply transfer whatever happened in the lab into the classroom. But of course, we can use a couple of things we have discovered, right? And then this one to wrap up the test. That's cheating. Yes. Okay, Eleni read my blog post before and she got everything right. Great. It's not cheating, it's doing research, Gabi. Come on. So this one, is it a myth or a fact? Myth, yes, myth. Well, this is a fact. It was a tricky question here. We can't really separate rationality from emotion. So this is, have you ever heard people say something like, you have to make a rational decision. You have to make a rational decision. So kind of like I have to separate, I have to suppress my emotions to be able to make a rational decision. You can't suppress your emotions, There are some people, there is a case, one of Antonio Damasio's patient. Antonio Damasio is a very famous Portuguese neuroscientist, and he called his patient Elliot, and he had some sort of brain injury that affected the limbic system, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and he couldn't really feel emotions like we do. So it was impaired. So he couldn't make decisions. How fun is that? It's a paradox. Like, because he couldn't feel emotions like we did, he was unable to make decisions. He would be like, restaurant A sounds like a nice choice, but restaurant B is also interesting. Maybe I should go there. But A is actually serves the kind of food that I like. So he would be forever facing this dilemma, which restaurant to go to, because of the emotional part that was not working well. So we need the lift, he says, that emotions give us to be able to make a decision. How about that, huh? Antonio Damasio is his name. And then I wrote about that. Okay, somebody, Bruno de França, I'd say not only can you delay the symptoms, but such conditions may never develop, even if it runs in the family. Yeah, that's true. You may, we're not going to have Alzheimer's disease just because somebody in the family did necessarily. But if we are going to develop it, being bilingual or multilingual is going to get you an extra 5 years, because you're going to be working with your neuroplasticity. That's, basically making your brain more flexible to change, and more, you're going to have a lot of cognitive reserve. That's the term, cognitive reserve. And then you're going to use that to protect your brain a little further, a couple of years more, okay? Now, active retrieval, that's another cool trick for you to learn more, to make this a little more memorable. Try to remember, don't mention anything in the chat box, because then you're going to interfere with other people's retrieval practice, okay? If you say, I remember this, and then somebody's going to look at it, oh yes, I was trying to remember, but then you stopped me. So try to remember, I'll give you 30 seconds, try to remember the neurofacts and myths that we discussed, and then I'm going to ask you to write, okay? So when I say write, you can do it, but not now. Okay, now you can start writing. What are some of the neurofacts and neuromyths that you can remember? Okay, Márcio Oliveira. Anybody else? 10% of our brains. Anything else? Come on, folks. Yeah. Children learn faster. Not necessarily, right? Left and right brain separation. Brain stops when we're sleeping. Bilingualism. Exactly. Learning styles. Yep. Yep. Bilingualism delays neurodegenerative diseases. Exactly. Wonderful. Wonderful. So you remembered most of them. I think all of them, right? Wonderful. So you can go to my blog. You can search for the keyword neuromyth, and then you're going to see the 4 blog post series, okay? So I talk about, I kind of contextualize what this blog series is going to be about. Then I talk about learning styles, fixed intelligence, forget about arts, drilling, multiple intelligences, and whatever. Broca's area and Wernicke's area on the left side of the brain are responsible for language. Yes, but just some aspects of language, okay, Patricia? Broca's area is an area in the frontal lobe. It's responsible for the mechanics of language and also understanding certain words. And also Wernicke's area is in the temporal lobe, the left temporal lobe, and it's also responsible for the connection between, meaning formation, basically, what the word means, for example. However, if you have any problems with aphasia, so aphasia is one of those areas is damaged, you can use your right hemisphere to compensate, but then you have to sing or change the intonation. So it depends, of course, on the damage you have. Sometimes you're never going to fully recover, but you can do that, right? It's neuroplasticity, exactly. Wonderful. Now, I love this picture of the cat. So I'm a big cat lover, just like my wife. And then, so how many neuromyths are prevalent? Yes. Take a guess. If you had to guess a number, how many neuromyths are prevalent today in educational settings? Huh? How many? I'm going to wait for you. Just take a guess, whatever you want to say. Yeah. So countless. I like that somebody said that, countless. Lots. That's a good guess. Just guessing 20. Well, folks, you're going far too many. Oh, I love Mirna. You guessed it right. Far too many. Well, can you see the number? Yeah. Can anybody write the number? Yes. What number is that? 53. Actually, that's a lie. I don't know if it's 53. According to this book by Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa, Making Classrooms Better, 50 practical applications of mind, brain, and education science. She classifies, she has a very long list of neuromyths. And there are myths about intelligence, like your intelligence is fixed. We know it's not really. Myths about brain architecture, like the left-right brain, we only use 10% of our brains act like a video camera. Myths about teaching and learning, individuals learn better when they receive information in their preferred learning styles. Music and arts are not important and stuff like that. The theory of multiple intelligences is validated by neuroscience research. It's not, I'm sorry to tell you that. You can read my article for the newsletter, BRAZ-TESOL newsletter. Myths about development and the environment, myths about brain activity, myths about brain plasticity, myths about memory, like memory is like an objective recording of a situation. Myths about the mind-brain connection, myths about emotions and learning. Oh my gosh, there are too many myths here. Myths about bilingualism. Children are sponges and learn foreign languages effortlessly, you know. Myths about gender and race. There are a lot of myths. A lot of those myths are actually based on, and I forgot to show you this. You're probably feeling like this guy right now, right? I love this picture. When you find out about how many neuromyths we have. And you know what? Again, I don't know how many neuromyths there are. Tracy doesn't know. Nobody knows. You know, there are many myths. There are many, actually, a lot of pieces of information that are not accurate about how the brain works. And somebody asked if the lecture is being recorded. Yes, it is. We don't know how many myths there are. We know that there are a lot of myths, and they could actually hinder, damage, harm the learning process in the classroom, okay? And like Mirna said, so Mirna, well done. Far too many neuromyths continue to be repeated in educational settings. And her book, Tracy Tokuhama's book, this book was written in 2014, and she looked at this guy's papers, Paul Howard Jones. He's a very cool professor. I had class with this guy at the University of Bristol. He's always wearing this kind of, you know, Hawaiian kind of flowered shirt, you know. And if there are many myths, how many are truly facts? That's a great question. I have no idea as well. You know, they talk about myths because, you know, the opposite of the myth is actually the fact, right? But anyway, I'm a huge fan. This is me, right? I'm a huge fan, not of wine, which I am as well, but of Paul Howard Jones, because he's a big reference in brain research. And he actually conducted the research about prevalent neuromyths in the UK. And according to his paper, more than 90% of teachers actually believed in the learning styles myth, okay? Now, why am I telling you this? Because, you know, if you believe in those neuromyths, you don't get the basic principles about the brain. And I'm going to use here very, very simple and objective language to talk about the brain so that you have an idea. And this is an oversimplification. Please don't take this seriously. You know, it's not for every situation, but basically the brain is very lazy. So the brain takes less than 3% of our body mass, and it uses almost 25% of all energy intake. So the brain needs a lot of energy to function because we have 86 billion neurons. Now, the brain will try to avoid spending energy when it's not necessary, because you know what? We don't know when we're going to get food again. So the brain is lazy. So we need to make classes interesting because we're going to be lazy in the classes. The brain is biased. We believe in a lot of, BS. Sorry to say the word BS. We have the limbic system that processes information very quickly and gives us the gut feeling, I believe this. And then we have the cortex. So the limbic system is a subcortical structure, has a bunch of things there, like the hippocampus, the amygdala, the ventral tegmental area, and everything. So when we look at something, this feels real, but maybe you need a little more processing, higher order thinking skills that is done in your cortex. So you're biased. So that means that students will think, I cannot do that. I've tried, this doesn't work. I'm not intelligent, or my teacher doesn't know what he's talking about, or fake news, or whatever. We have a bunch of examples out there. So we need to make sure that the things we tell our students and the things that teachers know, they're evidence-based, because otherwise they're just going to believe in their gut feeling, and that doesn't work very well. Our memory kind of sucks. So according to a lot of research into the working memory, and this research cannot be transferred to everything, because, like how many chunks of information can you hold in your working memory? Between 2 and 9. But what kind of information is that? Like visual information, complex information. So it's very hard for you to simply get that and say, oh, students can only learn 9 or 7 or 4 things at a time. It doesn't work like that very, very much. But we know that we lose things very quickly. We lose a lot of information quickly because our working memory gets too full, and then we cannot consolidate that, right? And it does suck. So basically everything I said before this slide, you don't remember right now, or most of it you can't remember. Unless, of course, there's an emotional attachment and you're enjoying the presentation, and then you can remember more. Now, the brain seeks pleasure. We have a reward system, and that has to do with engagement, motivation. We have dopamine, that is a neuromodulator, and we understand the dopamine pathway. The ventral tegmental area, we understand how it connects with the prefrontal cortex. So we need to use that information to be able to say something about how students get engaged, right? The brain can change. That's neuroplasticity. We learn all the time. Your brain is different now, right now. If you compare your brain now and when we started this session, it's different. You made new connections, you made new memories and everything, right? And learning is what the brain does. So Maria Cristina, do you think, well, I missed her question. Do you think that body movement can influence how we learn? Yes. And again, everyone, it's not about what I think, it's about what the evidence suggests, okay? We have to stop saying, I think when it comes to science, okay? We have to look at the evidence, we have to look at the studies and say, this is what the evidence suggests. The study was conducted with this sample, with this population and everything, and then maybe we can transfer to a real life situation like the classroom. So if learning is what the brain does, we shouldn't label our students like, idiot, retarded, or whatever, because they can learn. We just have to find a way to reach them, okay? And this is really bad when we do that, right? I promise I'm getting to the end. I'm going to need a couple of more minutes, and then we're going to have 10 minutes for questions, okay? How about that? So thank you, Jordana. Yes. So try to retrieve the things that I just told you. I showed you a list of things that the brain do, the basic principles of the brain. Everyone can learn. Yes, Doracy, the brain is lazy. But think for yourself now. Then you can share. It's active retrieval, okay? Okay. Don't share now. You're sharing, I think. Sorry, it was me. I didn't give you the instructions right. But remember, active retrieval is take some time, try to remember what I've just exposed you to, but don't check with anyone. That's you, that's your moment. And then you share, okay? So if you're sharing in the chat box, other people can see what you're sharing, And then they're not doing active retrieval. Active retrieval is to strengthen your neuronal networks so that you can actually access that information more easily the next time, okay? But yes, limbic system, brain is lazy, it can change, learning is what the brain does. We like pleasant things, we seek pleasure. Yeah, our brain seeks pleasure, exactly, right? Now, the big question is, should teachers know this stuff? Short-term memory is okay. What about long-term memory? I'm not sure I get your question, Dorothy. Yeah. Yeah, we have different systems. Yes, can we answer that? Yes, please answer this. Should teachers know this stuff? Yeah, of course, yes. Does that change? Does that influence how you teach? Well, the 6 dimensions, that's the question I asked when I was working on my dissertation. I was thinking, okay, let's check if teachers' knowledge of neuromyths, teachers' knowledge, if they know the neuromyths, actually influences what they do in the classroom, right? That was the first question. But then I was like, how the heck am I going to test that? I'm going to have to test, I'm going to have to get a lot of teachers, apply a survey, check how much they know about neuromyths and neurofacts, and then check if they're doing things based on neuromyths and neurofacts inside the classroom. So then my supervisor, my advisor said, you know what, why don't you create a scale to check if the things they are doing in the class, forget about neuromyths and neurofacts, the things that you're going to check are going to be based on good practices, practices based on the mind, brain, and education practice. What do you mean? So basically what I did was I constructed a mind, brain, and education science-based psychometric scale of effective classrooms. I went through Tracy Tokuhama's book, a bunch of papers. I looked at what actually works or should work better in the classroom because it's based on science, it's based on neuroscience, it's based on cognitive psychology, and also based on years and years of education and pedagogy and andragogy and everything. And then I made a list of those things. And then I applied that list. It's not open access yet, Fini, I'm sorry, I still have to publish that. So I found some common threads. I made basically larger groups, of things that we should be doing in the classroom because they are based on the science. And you know what? It's not anything extravagant. It's stuff that we already do, but we have to do more systematically, I guess. So, ta-da, what are the 6 major themes? So inside each of those themes, I have a bunch of, classroom practices that are based on mind-brain education. So basically, the first one is engagement. The brain needs to be engaged because the brain is lazy and it loses interest very easily, right? And then I have 5 things on how to engage the brain according to neuroscience inside that theme. The second one is memory. We need to understand how memory works. We need to understand that memory consolidation, the clarity of memory consolidation happens during our sleep, that we don't really have a lot of space in our working memory, that spacing out the study is actually better, that we need to actively retrieve stuff to strengthen the neuronal pathways and whatever. So that's all inside this topic, memory. The next one is personalization because we have different students. So we're going to talk about personalizing activities and differentiating activities according to the level of ability or knowledge that our students have. So you guys already do that, don't you? But do you do them systematically? Do you stop and reflect? And do you actually use them in every lesson? So that's what I did. I basically systematized the list of things you can do inside those topics. We also have to use more active learning. We have to somehow connect whatever our students are doing in the classroom with something more relevant that has to do with their community where they live. They can apply in real life. They can do more hands-on activity and then, just apply what they have learned in the classroom, right? We also have to work with their beliefs and attitudes because the brain is biased. So the brain might believe that, I'm stupid. I was not born for this. So we have to change that because we can. The research says that we can change that. We also have to work with assessment. And I selected continuous assessment because it's formative and summative assessment. And that includes a lot of feedback for our students to realize that they're on the right path or they're not on the right path, right? And what does that mean? Basically, it means I'm going to give you one topic, just one. So beliefs and attitudes is about self-efficacy, mindsets, metacognition, and neuroplasticity. So we can teach our students to be more self-efficacious, to be more self-determined, to organize their time, to reach a goal. We can teach our students to develop a more growth mindset. We have research about that. We can talk to our students about metacognition. This is what I'm doing right now. What works? How can we use the knowledge we have about the brain to actually create techniques or strategies based on that so that our students can learn better? And we can tell them about neuroplasticity. Their brains are always learning. They have a lot of plasticity, which means that they can learn till the rest of their lives. And this guy, who was partially responsible for spreading the learning styles myth, and he has corrected himself on many occasions already. So he says this. Right? Does that make sense? We should, I'm not telling you to, to go get a master's degree on epigenetics and biology and neuroscience and neurophysiology or whatever, but we should learn some of the basic principles so that we can apply that in the classroom. And that's what I try to simplify, create a scale so that teachers can do that, right? And according to the Education Endowment Foundation, this actually works well because, we're doing a lot of things. We're spending a lot of money on things that don't work very well when we're talking about students' outcomes, learning outcomes. What does work well? Metacognitive strategies, knowing, and here I love how they define that, helping pupils think about their own learning more explicitly. So we need to know how the brain works so we can do that, so we can teach them strategies. Not only our students, but especially our teachers. Should I do that? Do I have any evidence for this strategy that I'm doing, right? So to wrap up, conclusion, finally, and then you can ask me questions. I love this image of the brain, this amazing image. This actually shows you the neurons. Can you see here? So this is the neurons, the axon. So this is basically made of fat. It's all white. If you can cut the brain, you're going to see that this is the white matter and this is the gray matter. So you have the dendrites here. You have a lot of electrical activity. You have a bunch of neurotransmitters, that's chemical signals in there. It's amazing. It's huge. It's complex, which means that I can never give you a recipe for success. It's never going to be do this and then your students will learn. And I can compare that a little bit with a game, with a basketball game. Why basketball? Because I used to play basketball, believe it or not, a long time ago. We actually almost won a championship in Sorocaba. I didn't go to the final game, but I remember getting 2 free shots and my mom was screaming, yeah, because, the ball actually went through the hoop and everything. But I admired this guy very much, Michael Air Jordan, amazing, amazing basketball player, in my opinion, the best of all time. And Michael Jordan said something that has everything to do with teaching, I think. And this is what he said. Does that make sense to you? That's teaching, folks, no matter how much you learn and know about the brain, because we know very little, because we're conducting the research in a laboratory, not inside the classroom. There are many variables in the classroom. No matter how much you know about basketball, I got to get the ball. I have to, to throw the ball. I have to actually get the ball to go through the hoop, and then I score 2 points. Depending on how far I am, I score 3 points, and I have to stop the other team from doing that, right? It doesn't matter how much you know, because every game is a different game. So even though you are equipped for the lesson, a lot of variables are out of hand, out of control. You cannot control them very well. So there's never going to be a recipe for successful teaching, but we can always try to use what we know works, see what happens, make mistakes, correct ourselves, and make it better. Do it better the next time, right? So that's why we need to have evidence. We need to have science so that we can do it better. We can always get it better because that's what science does. It studies how to make things better, okay? Thank you very much. If you want to send me, an email, if you want to talk to me, follow me on social media. Now you can ask questions. I hope I have some time left. I'm sorry. Yes.
But thank you so much, Andre. It was amazing. I'll clap
Thank you.
attendees who don't have a voice here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching.
It was
everyone.
amazing. Yeah, I'm sure everyone loved it. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, for being here with us. It
My
was
pleasure.
enlightening. And you know what? My first undergraduate degree is in biology. So I love
Awesome.
the topic. Yeah, I love the topic. I love it. Everything about it. Without further delay, yeah, people, because we only have 5 minutes.
3 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Should I answer the ones
I'm
here
gonna
in
read
the question and
it.
answer block? Okay.
If it is okay, Andre, I'm gonna read it because then it doesn't
Sure.
get on YouTube. People can't see it, so I have to read it.
Perfect.
Here are a specific part of the brain for second language. I remember the incident with singer Herbert Viana. It is said that when he woke up from coma, he would only speak in English.
Well, this is a very interesting question. There is a very large meta-analysis, a study that looks at other studies, previous studies by Jubin Abutalebi, but I think it's a little old now. And he looks at language and proficiency, like age of attainment, like when you get to the highest possible level, and proficiency and neuronal networks in the brain. So apparently when we are learning a second language, at the beginning, we're going to use different areas in the brain, sort of. So you can actually map that the neuronal networks are not exactly the same for L1 and L2, but the more you get proficient, they're going to overlap basically. So L1 and L2, they're going to be on the same neuronal network, kind of like that. There's more research about that by Edna Andrews, Duke University. So there isn't a place in the brain for L1 and L2. Everything is in the same place, but they're slightly different locations if your levels of proficiency are very different. If your levels of proficiency are very similar, then you use basically the same neuronal networks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Oh, there are so many questions here. We won't have time.
Yeah. Too bad, guys. But follow me, I'll answer your questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Andre can check these later. Yeah.
I'm more than happy to give 5 more minutes of mine because mine is a very relaxed pace, so there's no need. So if you need 5 more minutes, that's no problem with me. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dennis. But I don't think 5 minutes will be enough anyway. But I'm sure Andre can check these questions later. Maybe he can share with us the answers in our Instagram and Facebook page.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So one more here. What's the role of multiple intelligence in learning? Any truth to that? Any truth?
Well, according to neuroscientific evidence, there's no such thing as multiple intelligences because intelligence is a cognitive thing. The other things that, according to Howard Gardner, there was 8, and then there were 8, and then 9, right? They are not really considered intelligences. They're more like skills or competencies, right? So we can measure sort of intelligence if we use an IQ test. That's highly controversial as well, but that's the kind of cognitive thing that we're measuring, the G, the thing that is our intelligence. So what we know is that students have some skills that are called intelligences by according to this theory, but it's nice for you to say it's an intelligence, because then students feel intelligent because they have another type, but it's not really intelligence, the kind of rational, logical intelligence that we talk about when we are using IQ tests, for example. So I wrote a very, I hope, easy to read article for the BRAZ-TESOL newsletter. I'm happy to send the PDF to anybody who send me an email, and I explain in detail the multiple intelligence and learning styles, okay? But use your students' skills on to benefit them, of course. If you have a very artistic student in the classroom, of course, it would benefit your student to learn through something that he or she likes, right? But it's not that they have this intelligence. This is not supposed to be called an intelligence. Even Howard Gardner says that now. So he has a bunch of books and lectures that he says, drop the intelligences, don't call it intelligences anymore. Yes. Anything else?
Oh, I love this topic. Sorry, I got a bit flustered. Final question, okay?
Sure.
She had an idea here. I don't want to put you on the spot, Andre, but if you agree, maybe we can post some short videos on our Instagram and Facebook page with you answering some of the other questions.
That would be amazing. Please, save the questions. I can do that. I'll try to do my best.
So
I don't know all the answers.
I've then you have some time,
guys.
Okay, great. So let's do that.
Let's
do that so Andrea can answer them in a more relaxed way. Not against the clock.
Can I answer just one more? The Thiago Santos, I promise this.
Of course.
So Thiago Santos has a very, very interesting question. Based on Michael Jordan's quote and Howard Gardner's misconception on learning styles, how would you feel if you found out much of what we've seen here today turns out to be wrong? Well, this is the magic of science, Thiago. We're always making progress, or we're always revisiting some of the concepts. It's different from dogmatism. And that's what is wonderful about it, So the more we make progress in terms of technology, for example, we can now look at people's brain, on the inside of their brain with fMRI machines, for example. We can see where the blood flows, where there's activity. So we are going to find out a lot of things that we didn't know before, and we're probably going to change a lot of things that we think we know today. That's why, remember what I said, it's never, this is like that, even though we say it like that when we're presenting, when we're talking, this is like that. It's more like the evidence suggests that this is what happens in the brain when you're learning under specific conditions in a certain population, okay? And then it's okay to be wrong. That's how we learn. According to neuroscience, being wrong tells you that, you know what, it's okay. I can be wrong. I can learn. I can keep going. And let's move on.
It's all about creating hypotheses, right?
Exactly.
Great. Thank you so much, Andre. It was amazing. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope to see you in person or not in one of our events again, right?
Yes, I'd love to. Just call me and I'll be there. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be around. So see you folks, and I'll try to answer your questions if you send me anything. Okay.
Andrea, I think we should have a live session on Instagram. We have a live session on Instagram with you answering the other questions.
That's a perfect idea. Let's do it.
So people are more than ever follow us on our Instagram. So we're gonna have more of André.
Okay, people, that was amazing, wasn't it? So we'd like to thank our sponsors again, and let me tell you a bit about how the raffle is going to work at the end, okay? After Dennis' session, we're going to share with you a link, a form just like André did, very simple, in which you're going to write your name, your email, and we're going to use that in order to do the raffle, okay? So stick around, we have some amazing prizes, okay? So after Dennis's session, I'm sure we are gonna be a bit emotional maybe, but stick around, okay? So Dennis is our next speaker. Welcome, Dennis. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, for being here, and for being so brave as to talk about a topic that is so delicate at the moment, right? So, but so necessary at the same time, right? So Dennis Warren is human. Being human is the best way to get through most days, meaning he tries to be human as a father, and Thomas is a sweetheart, academic manager, and teacher trainer. When he's not human, that doesn't mean you're not human, right?
No.
You have to be human in order to pursue those other things as well. But he's a Delta holder. He has a pre-Brazil background in computational linguistics, and he's been in Brazil for 17 years, and he's been teaching, and we actually, we work together, so I can say that he's a wonderful professional and a very human being.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about the beans. But
that's okay.
Apparently he's a very good cook, okay? Thank you very much, Dennis. Dennis will be talking to us about what we do in the dark, a survivor's guide to well-being in ELT. So thank you very much, Dennis.
Okay, thank you. Let me just, I've been playing with some of the settings in PowerPoint, so if this goes slightly wrong, I apologize, but I hope it won't. And I hope that you ask me much easier questions than you have Sandra. So there are very difficult questions. But coincidentally, my master's degree is in cognitive science, Andrea, overlapping to a degree, because mine was really about language and language processing. But I hope when if we do get to meet, we're going to actually be able to talk about the brain a little bit. Perfect. Okay, can I just ask you what you're seeing now? Are you seeing just the slide, what we do in the shadows, or are you seeing everything else?
We're seeing now just the slides, Dennis.
Awesome, because that's the thing I've been playing with, so I can see my notes at the same time. So awesome, that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't need to say anything more about me. And I'm quite a private kind of person, so I don't publicize myself very much, and I tend to kind of stay in my own realm and not get outside much, to be honest. But this is something that I'm really interested in, this very topic. And why have I chosen this topic? Well, now more than ever, of course, when all of us are isolated and in our houses working from home, I think well-being is a topic that we all need to be thinking about and acting on. But it's an interest that came to me before this, at least within the last couple of years. It's something I've been actively interested in, because when we think about teachers, we think about what do we demand of teachers. We demand that they be caring in the classroom. We demand that they actually look after their students' needs, that they analyze their students' needs. And it strikes me as well that maybe we need to think about how we as teachers can take care of our own needs, and also, you know, how we can develop the skills necessary to cope in difficult times like we're living through right now. Okay, so that is actually the topic of the first half of this talk. But right now, I think this topic is still a bit taboo. So when we think about issues of mental health, for example, if we're under a great deal of stress and finding it very hard to cope, it's still something that we hide in the shadows a bit and can often be hard to admit, especially in a professional realm. And it seems to me that schools, coordinators and managers, you know, also need to start taking a more active role in caring for their teachers. And that is what the second half of this talk is going to be all about. Now, the talk itself is wrapped in a story. It's actually a very personal story about myself, which happened about 20 or so years ago. And it's taught me many things about well-being and about survival and about being human, basically. So I hope you're sitting comfortably, because we'll begin with part of the story. So let's go back in time. As I said, it's over 20 years ago. In 1999, I moved to Belgium. Originally, I'm from the UK, but I moved to Belgium for a job in computational linguistics. And this was the lovely city in which I lived, a very beautiful medieval town in the west of Belgium. Now, a bit of context. I just come from a very painful, difficult, and damaging long-term relationship. And I kind of ignored the effects of this on me. And for me, Belgium was very much a kind of freedom. And I wanted to enjoy the freedom as much as possible. So I partied a lot, I flirted a lot. And in the end, after a few months, I discovered that I actually wasn't coping very well at all, because I'd been ignoring the problems I had in my prior relationship, and I wasn't really taking care of myself. And so one day, feeling incredibly overwhelmed by the pressure, by the newness of my situation, I sat in my kitchen, in my apartment, and I thought, I need to get away. I need to escape. I need to run away from my problems. And, you know, because I was young in those days, and because I'm an Aries, and because I was also born in the year of the monkey, I decided to take a very impulsive decision, and I ran away. This is what I did. I took a 2-hour train ride from where I lived to Brussels airport. I arrived at the airport. I looked at the flight board, and I saw near the top the next flight to Helsinki, Finland. And so I boarded the flight and I landed in Finland. From Helsinki, I took a train, and that train took me to the far north of Finland, to a small city called Rovaniemi, which is actually on the Arctic Circle. And here is a wonderful picture of that place. The temperatures were around -15. And in those freezing moments, I was numb in many ways, not just physically, but mentally. Yeah, I was kind of frozen in time, a little bit like the character you can see here in the picture. And I stayed there for 1 week, walking in the snow every day, thinking about the mistakes I'd made. And I punished myself an awful lot about my failures and everything that I'd done that was so wrong. Here's the key though, I spoke to no one. Nobody knew I was there. I had actually run away. Nobody knew where I was, what I was doing. And I didn't even think about what other people were feeling or thinking about my absence. So what on earth was I doing, you might ask yourselves. So let's pause the story for a minute, okay? So let's pause. I'm here, I'm in the Arctic, it's very cold, and I'm in a mess, okay? So what's going on? Was I doing the right thing, actually, in running away from my problems? Feel free to comment, okay? I know my own answers to this, so you're more than welcome to comment what you think. Basically, from my point of view, I clearly wasn't coping. Yeah, it's clear that I had no coping strategies to deal with any of the stress that I was under. And because of that, you know, the demands of work life were getting too difficult. I was too stressed. And basically, I did basically what this quote says, my coping mechanisms were poor, so therefore I was under an increasing amount of stress. So the question is, what should I have done that was the right thing? Yeah. So let's think. Okay, 20 years ago, here I am in the snow. Let's say we can have a conversation with myself. What advice would you give to myself 20 years ago? I'd be more than happy to hear comments, or if you write some comments about what do you think I should have done at that moment. Should I have run away? Should I have done something else? I'm guessing the no means I shouldn't have run away. Meditation, okay, there's one good technique for helping cope with the stresses of life. Inner purpose is also a very important thing. Yeah. So there are things I could have done. Talk to friends, absolutely. Nice suggestion. Take some time off, which is what I did, Diane, but perhaps I didn't do it in the right way. Yeah. Absolutely. I did not escape my problems. In fact, I made my problems worse, as you're going to hear in a moment. So the basic advice I would have given to myself, if I could, is exactly what some of you have been saying. Talk to someone I trusted. Because often when we're alone and we're facing these problems, as Andre said, we can't separate rationality from the emotional. So therefore, it's actually very difficult to be objective about our own situations when we're really, really stressed. And sometimes sharing can actually make us reduce and diminish the size of the problem. Second thing, as somebody suggested, I could have organized the timeout properly. Yeah, sometimes timeout is really, really important, and we have to get away to a space where we can feel less stress, but we need to plan it. Yeah, so if timeout is the answer, it needs to be organized. We need to get help to organize it. Maybe even get a doctor to get some sick leave. So officially, in terms of professional life, you're protected. And then finally, of course, there's no point having time out unless you have an option. And as I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Eleni, therapy would be an option, absolutely. So you need to have a plan. What are you going to be doing in that time out? Okay, you need to have a plan about how you're going to work through those problems of immediate stress. What are your longer term strategies in terms of helping you to make the right kind of decisions about your personal or your professional future? And of course, it may well and should probably involve a therapist. But one thing I certainly needed at that time was to start working on my coping strategies, because I simply didn't have any apart from the flight reaction that many of us animals do have. Okay. So coping strategies themselves are pretty well documented in terms of positive psychology. There are various models that we've all seen probably based on well-being. And I'm going to briefly look at one of those models, and it was developed by Martin Seligman, who's a US-based psychologist and educator. And you'll see at the end of these slides, when I do share them with you, that you will have some references for you to chase up. Now, the model that Seligman developed is called the PERMA model, all right? And like every good model, PERMA is actually an acronym, okay? So we have, originally it was 5 letters, but there is recently an additional one being added to it. So help me out here. So the first letter in PERMA is, of course, P. So suggestions, what does the P stand for? Process, that would be interesting. Yeah, you need to process what's going through. Perseverance, nice one. If you were creating your own model, all of these ideas would be perfect, okay? What Seligman suggests is positive emotion. Now, let's be clear. This is not the idea that you hypnotize yourself and think that everything is positive, because it's not about that. The idea is that you need to have a right balance of the positive in your life, and you need to be able to train yourself to recognize the positives. So thinking about my situation, there were some negatives, of course, but I was living in a beautiful city. I had some amazing friends. I was learning a great deal, and it wasn't all as bad as I thought it was at that moment, okay? So if I'd been working on the idea of recognizing the important things in my life, perhaps I wouldn't have taken the steps I did. The next letter is the letter E. So what do you think that stands for? Enthusiasm, engaged, these would be great ones for me, yeah. Again, we could collect all these suggestions, we could create our own model of well-being, absolutely. Okay, what Seligman suggested stands for is what somebody wrote, oops, I made a typo there, my apologies, engagement. Okay, the idea is that you develop your strengths. So these, your strengths and the things that you enjoy doing are the things that engage you with the world. And so we should be developing those and recognizing opportunities for us to engage in the things that we really, really like doing. The next letter is the letter R. What might that refer to? Resilience is a brilliant one. Reality, absolutely. We have to recognize the reality. Yeah, resilience has come up more than once, and it should go in that place. But it's not that one, and it's probably the one that I personally, in that situation 20 odd years ago, should have called upon, and it's relationships, yeah? And it's the creation of authentic connections between you and other people. These are the things that give us energy. These are the things that give us a safe harbor that when we need to actually escape for a while, these are people that can listen to us. And I think in my particular situation, relationships was the one area that I wasn't working on properly at all. And especially with the move from one country to another, that made it more difficult. Thankfully, I did a much better job when I moved to Brazil, hence I'm here for such a long time. The next letter is the letter M. Suggestions for what it might mean. Matrimony, that's a lovely one, Thiago, yeah. Maybe marriage is not the answer to every single solution, every single problem, but you know, it can help to have a significant other. Money is also a very good one, yeah. Woody Allen, who's not very popular these days, of course, for the right reasons, said people who believe that money can't buy you happiness don't know where to shop. Mindfulness is also a very nice one. Mindfulness is a relatively recent phenomenon, and it wasn't included in Seligman's model. What he decided that M standard for was not mac and cheese, Louise, meaning. The idea is that you have a connection to something bigger than ourselves. Now, many people find meaning in God. Yeah, the idea that there is something that's guiding them and helping them through the most difficult times. Some people don't have that idea. But I think it's really important that we do establish some kind of connection beyond ourselves, because this can actually help us get through the hardest possible times. The next letter is the letter A. Any ideas? Adjusting. Action is a nice one. Avant-garde. I like that. Agency is good. I like the agency because it's all about being responsible for yourself and having agency of your own life. Absolutely. Attitude is a similar idea, yeah. Art brings us many things, and you'll notice that, you know, my slides tend to involve a few artistic moments, because I think that's really, really important. What Seligman chose is accomplishment. And the idea is that you have the belief, not only the ability, but the belief to do things that matter to you. Yeah. And that, you know, you measure your accomplishments or your achievements. That's an alternative for it. Yeah, Simone. You measure your achievements and you recognize them, and you take time to celebrate them rather than pretending that they don't exist at all. The last one is the letter H. And now this one is a latecomer. This wasn't originally in Seligman's model, which is rather strange. It's also sometimes replaced with the letter V as well. Humility, healing, honesty. It's very nice. Oh, I wish it was humanity, Eleni. I really do. What it actually is health. Because all of these previous letters refer to more mental things, and health connects physical to the mental, which I think we all know are really, really important aspects. So it's all about eating well, moving regularly, sleeping deeply. It's all those things that are really important to keep us physically and therefore mentally healthy. And so, you know, this is a very holistic idea. Yes, Catalina. Okay, now, because of the time of this, this talk, I'm not going to be able to go a lot into those, but I do encourage you to explore at least some of the ones that feel that you can have a relationship with, that you feel are important to you, because they can actually be really useful for helping you get through the hardest times. We're all going through a really tough time now at the moment, yeah? We're all isolated, we're seeing family less, our colleagues, you know, I'm missing my colleagues deeply, you know, I work with around about 100 people, and I see many of them, I used to see many of them every single day. And I was known as a bit of a hugger. I'm English, but I'm a hugger. And I'm missing hugging people. And when I do get back, I think I might actually damage a few people physically, because I'm going to hug them so tight. It's going to be really difficult. So I recommend that you take a look at that model or alternative models that you feel, yes, an English hugger, it's a rare thing, yeah? I recommend you take a look at the model. And as you'll see, there are some more practical details in the link at the end of the presentation, okay, which I will be sharing before you ask. So there is a plan for things for you to look at when things are getting tough. And this is not about emergencies. This is about you developing the skills and the strategies so that when stress does increase, you at least have some coping strategies and you don't end up doing what I did, which was simply to run away. Now let's go back to our story. Okay, where am I? Do you remember? In the north of Finland, absolutely. It's actually a wonderful city, Rovaniemi, and it has a wonderful museum of the Arctic, which I didn't visit at the time, but I visited later when I was in a better place. So there I am in the frozen Arctic, okay. Now, I decided that perhaps I needed to start facing up to what was going on. So here I am, I'm cold and sad. I decided, okay, I need to face my demons. I need to decide what to do. I can't stay hidden away. I didn't have the money to stay hidden away. So I decided to call a friend, to talk to her, to tell her I was okay, and that I was coming back. So I don't know if you remember the journey that I took on the way there, but I took the reverse journey on the way back. I took the train from Rovaniemi to Helsinki, which is about 7 hours overnight. Then I took a flight from Helsinki to Brussels, and then a 2 or 3 hour train ride from Brussels to my town, Ypres. And every single kilometer that passed, I was feeling heavier and heavier and heavier with the realization of what I'd done and what I would face when I got back. Now, here's a beautiful picture. These are the canals around the city. The city of Ypres is a medieval city that was destroyed in the First World War, but then completely rebuilt to look exactly as it did in the previous 500 years. Now, these canals look very beautiful, very placid, very calming. But when I got back, I discovered that the fire brigade had been dragging the city canals on my body because I'd simply disappeared. And now that I was alive and obviously irresponsible, the fire brigade decided that I was going to have to pay for all the effort and work that they had been going through. Everybody in my workplace, more or less 250 people, knew about what had happened, all of them. And I was feeling horribly exposed. Obviously, my family and my friends were there were worried sick, obviously. They had no idea where I was, what I was doing. Interestingly, the only exception to this was my mother, because she was convinced that I was okay and I'd gone off to be alone, and how right she was, yeah? So she knew me better than anybody at that moment. So I arrived back to this mess. 1 day later, I'm sitting in the office of my manager, who rightly told me that I should have said something, that I could have organized time off, and I could have tried to get some better support. He was right, and I was a bit ashamed, to be honest, even though, you know, at that moment of reaction when I had run away, it was under extreme stress and I wasn't really thinking straight. I couldn't separate the rational from the emotional. But then at the end of the conversation, he said something that really struck me. And he said to me, if you ever need to talk to someone about your problems, then please, you can come and talk to me. And at that moment, I paused and I thought, this man, this manager of mine, I had spoken to him at my interview 6 months previously, and I'd said hello to him almost every single day in the corridors, but I'd never had a social conversation with him. So I turned to him and I replied, well, you're right that I should talk to someone, but I would never talk to you about personal matters because I don't know you and you don't know me. Perhaps I was a little bit cheeky in saying that, you know, I just created a terrible mess for the company, for my family and friends. But as I said, I'm an Aries and I'm a monkey, so I do tend to have these kind of reactions. But this has stayed with me ever since, actually, because it made me think about trust and confidence between employer and employee. And how we give more than a third, more than a third of our lives to our work. Yet it can be very hard to admit to emotional difficulties and get a proactive, sympathetic response. And so this is the next part of the talk that I want to bring up. So what I'm going to do now is I want to share with you one or two simple ideas, actually, that I believe can be used for schools to create a positive environment of well-being for teachers and for all the employees, not just simply the teachers. These are the secretaries, the people who do the cleaning, every single person who makes a school run. Now, I've divided them into three kinds of action. We're going to call them green, orange, and red because they become progressively more difficult to implement, okay? So let's go with the green first. Now, teacher's room. I'm assuming that many people who are attending this webinar, watching this webinar, some of you you work for yourself, you're self-employed. Others of you are teaching in organizations and in schools. So a quick question, how many of you have a teacher's room in your school? A few no's, a lot of yeses. Yeah, just you have a Harry Potter bedroom, that's probably a good teacher's room. So most of you do, some of you don't. I mean, the first requirement of any organization which really wants to take seriously the well-being of its teachers is a teacher's room. And not just simply a teacher's room, which is a place to hang coats or put books, yeah? you need the time to use it. So that means sympathetic timetabling that allows teachers to have the space and the time to spend with each other. Because where do you get your best ideas? Where do you get your best support? Where are you able to let off steam? Yeah, these often happen in the teacher's room, and that's really, really important. The next thing are activities organized by the school or by the group of teachers within the school that actually encourage some kind of group identity. And from a group identity comes group support, yes? So think about, it could be a simple thing. It could be a formal moment where teachers can get together to share their ideas, to share their activities, to demonstrate things. These are really important. But it could be something more formal. It could be more complex, like formal training. It could be communities of practice. A community of practice is where teachers get together in order to discuss the issues that they're coming up against, to discuss the best ways to work with certain levels or certain target language. But these are key, because if a school simply gives you a timetable, asks you to teach, you come in, you go home, you don't have an identity as a teacher of that organization. And neither do you have an identity as a teacher within a group. You know, a group is the most self-sustaining and supportive thing possible. And it can be independent of the school. And that's why we have a great community like BRAZ-TESOL, for example, that provides support and help to each other. But schools themselves really need to have a community. The final one in the green box is an open door policy. And what I mean by this is where coordinators and managers are available. Yeah, that means that they're present in the lives of the school, so that they show that they are interested in the lives and the work of their teachers, that they show that they want to share their ideas with them, and that they want to hear the ideas of the teachers. This is another aspect of creating this group identity and this idea of support. So coordinators shouldn't be those kind of people who appear when they have timetables to give you or when somebody has complained about you. They should be present in your lives and going through all the ups and downs that you go through. Okay, so those are what I consider to be the easy things. Okay, now let's move on to the orange things, which are slightly more complicated. So the first one. As I said before, the issue of mental health specifically as part of well-being is something that is really ignored by a lot of schools, a lot of teachers. My belief is that a school needs to have an environment that takes well-being into account. So Carolina, yeah, just to go back, the open door policy is for the managers and the coordinators to be available to you as part of your daily life, basically. Yeah, I hope that clarified that. But the environment that needs to take well-being into account and remove the taboo is something that's really important. And I think the first step is to show that any kind of mental health difficulties are something that we all go through, and to actually talk about them and to admit them. So I'll give you one example in my environment. Just over a year ago, I got divorced after quite a long marriage. And that had quite a toll on me personally, and it made it very difficult for me to do my job properly. And I found that once I started talking about that, and I did a session about well-being, more focused on the PERMA model that we looked at briefly, I found that after I'd given that talk and talked about my own difficulties, I was actually flooded with comments and questions and admissions from my colleagues that they had also been going through issues. And I think that was really important, because people recognize when there is a genuine attempt to deal with these issues. And the thing that many schools shouldn't do is what I experienced the very first teacher meeting I had in school in Brazil was as follows. I was sitting there with a group of other teachers. The owner of the school entered holding some paper in her hands. And she said, look, we're about to hand out the timetables. In her hand wasn't the timetables. In her hand was a bunch of CVs that she'd received. And she said, if you don't like your timetable, remember, I have plenty of people who want to work here. Now, this is the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. This is not an attitude which actually takes into account people's well-being and their needs and removes the taboo from well-being, okay? You should be doing the opposite. It should all be about creating an environment in which people feel free to talk about the issues that they're having and hope to get support and sometimes help from the school in which they work. The next thing, I think, which is also quite a complex idea, is the idea that managers, and when I use managers very broadly, I mean anybody who has some kind of position within the school which can affect your work directly because they are an authority. So that could be the coordinator, it could be an academic manager like me, or it could be some other kind of manager. Accessible managers relates to the open door policy that I mentioned earlier, but it's also about the skills to deal with complex issues. Yeah. So, for example, a teacher comes to you Monday morning, tells you that she cannot cope with the group that she has at 2 o'clock, and she spent the whole of Sunday evening crying about it because she was so stressed. What do you say to that teacher? If another teacher comes to you and tells you that his wife has been diagnosed with terminal cancer and he has no idea what he's going to do, how do you treat that? How do you discuss that with the teacher? You need experience and training, don't you, to deal with those kind of situations. It's really, really hard because it's very easy to become overwhelmed yourself with the kind of issues that people bring to you. And I do think it's a manager's role to provide support in the kind of environment in which we believe that the human is essential. Teaching is all about humanity, yes? And so managers also need to recognize that they're not cogs in a machine. They need to recognize that teachers are human in the first place, as Anna Julia just said. But managers and coordinators, those things don't happen naturally. Perhaps they need training in personnel management or conflict management. Perhaps they need to look at things like coaching and to have a specific policy to help people. So Carolina just suggests, for example, giving this person a day off, talking to the students, talking to the parents. Absolutely. Support is the most important thing. Our greatest resource is the human resource. And if we don't take care of it, we're going to lose it. So let's move on to what I consider to be the red zones, okay? The more complex ones to work on. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're impossible, of course. It just means that they take a little bit more thought, they take a little bit more work. The first one relates to what Carolina has just mentioned, which is about workplace flexibility. Now, this is an organization which has enough, what's the word? Enough, I'm going to use a Portuguese word here, enough folga in order to actually take into account the fact that things are going to happen and that you need to be able to react quickly and flexibly to them. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to tell you about a teacher, and we'll call her Maria. Okay, that's not her name, but let's call her Maria. Maria, her husband had cancer, and she was finding it really hard to balance her family needs because she had a couple of children. She was finding it really, really hard to balance those needs and the needs of her sick husband with the responsibilities she had for the financial security of her family. She worked for us full-time, which is about 30-something hours per week. And she came to talk to us. And we decided, the flexibility I'm talking about, we decided that we were not going to reduce her salary, but we were going to allow her to teach fewer hours. And in order to reach those, to reduce those hours by more or less 8 hours a week, so that she had mornings free, we said, okay, if and when you have time, could you please help us develop some material? It's about this is the topic, this is the level. The aim was never to sort of go after and say, where's the material, where's the material? It was actually to give her a way out so that she knew that she wasn't being treated like a charitable case, she was being treated like a human being who had needs, and that we wanted to answer those needs. Okay, so this is what I mean by workplace flexibility, that takes into account people's individual needs as much as possible. It's not always possible, we know that, but as much as possible so that we can act humanely towards everybody. Now, the next thing is a formal well-being policy. Now, this is perhaps one of the more complex ones, because this perhaps would lay out the rights and responsibilities of the workplace and the employee, that lays out the procedures in the events of like serious issues related to well-being, how we would deal with those. We do tend to have policies in place when it comes to sick leave. Somebody brings a sick note or a doctor's note to say that they can have time off, but very often there is a gray area in which it's difficult to get a doctor's note, and then we need to be more understanding. And this is actually probably very hard because it merges ethical matters and legal matters. And to develop it, I think, let's say smallish schools, to develop it would be very, very difficult for them. And I'm perhaps going to put my oar in here a moment, and I haven't worded Giordano about this or anybody else in BRAZ-TESOL, but I actually believe that BRAZ-TESOL should be doing more advocacy work on behalf of teachers, as well as the great work being done related to training, development, sharing, practice, and so on. I think BRAZ-TESOL should be acting more as an ethical organization in terms of encouraging schools and employees to work with teachers in a more rounded, holistic way. So what I'm suggesting, and this is a suggestion I would be more than happy to help with, is, for example, BRAZ-TESOL creating a series of templates of well-being policies of different types, from the green to the orange to the red, which they can offer to schools, so that they have to think less about the difficulties of putting together these kind of policies and the complications that they involve. Yeah. Going even further, there could even be the idea of a recognition scheme by BRAZ-TESOL, where you give a certificate to a school saying that they have a good well-being policy and that it's a good place to work. Okay. Yeah, there is a well-being SIG. I'm part of it, although I'm not here officially in that capacity. But yeah, absolutely. The well-being SIG is a good place to begin looking at those kind of templates and how we would bring about those policies. Absolutely. Okay, let's recap. So remember, when we think about the two elements of this talk, the first element was about the individual and the things that we can do to help ourselves. Yes, we looked at the PERMA model. Okay. This model of the PERMA model is designed to help us to kind of practically look at different aspects of our lives and how we can develop the coping strategies. I would just like, if you can you write in what PERMA stands for, what each word? Remember, it's P-E-R-M-A-H. Can you write those in the chat, and we'll see how quickly we can come up with a complete model? Positive emotion, absolutely. Thank you, Thiago. Yeah, positive emotion is all about recognizing and balancing the good with the not so good. Okay. Engagement, finding things that you're good at and working on those. You've all got brilliant memories. This is awesome. Yeah. The R stands for relationships. Yeah. Creating connections, genuine, full connections with other people that are going to be there for you when you need them. The M was for meaning, finding meaning in your life which is bigger than yourself. The A, yes, was accomplishment, and that's all about recognizing and celebrating your moments of accomplishment. And the final one is health, which is to look after yourself, to eat well, to sleep well. So these are what the individual can do. And, you know, I think the individual does have a responsibility for their own mental health. But it's all about what happens in the before, because you develop the strategies before the crisis happens. When the crisis happens, this is perhaps when the school or the community comes in, because we're not simply a collection of individuals, are we? We're a community, and we expect a lot of teachers. We want to see commitment from them above and beyond the call of duty. We want to see the best of their humanity in the classroom. We ask them to consider the learning of the student. We ask them to help the student learn by having warmers or lead-ins, by activating schemata, all of those things. But this humanity, the humanity of the teacher, also needs looking after. And I think schools, more than teachers, they need to step out of the shadows and create the minimal conditions that recognize this humanity of their best results. I'm finishing 8 minutes early, so we've made up for the time that we lost. So I'm going to say thank you now. And please ask me some nice questions, because those difficult questions you ask Andre, I don't think I would ever try to answer. And just so you know, there's a series of references. I'll be sending out this presentation as a PDF, which you can refer to. And there's some really interesting ones there about burnout. For example, one little factoid is that burnout is often more common in students with teachers with about 10 or more years of experience. It doesn't often happen with new teachers, which is very, very interesting. Okay, let me stop my share there.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
Again, I think I raced a little bit too. I was a little bit anxious, so I raced a bit faster than I should have done.
No, not at all, not at all, not at all. As I mentioned before, it's not an easy topic, yeah, because we are all living a very delicate moment now. So we all have to deal with our own well-being. If you're thinking about yourself as a manager, you have to consider yourself first, and in order to help others, right? So
absolutely,
it's not easy. Sometimes we worry about the teachers, we worry about the school, and we have to worry about ourselves as well. Yeah, and that goes for the teachers. We worry about the students, but we have to worry about ourselves as well. Yeah. So thank you very much. People actually didn't post their questions in the Q&A box, but there were
I can see some, yeah. I can see some. How can we talk about creating this kind of environment to our bosses if they're only worried about money, no matter what is going on with teachers' mental health? It's a very good question, yeah. And my answer is going to be a bit trite, and I apologize because I know it's not as simple as what I'm about to say is, then that school does not deserve your service as a teacher, basically. I know that's not as simple, that's not as easy as it sounds, yeah. You need to find employment. Sometimes we have no choice but to work in environments which we sometimes feel are less than good for us. But yeah, first choice, don't give them your service. But then of course the second thing is to start the conversation. If they're not going to start the conversation, then maybe you should be starting the conversation. Yeah. Yeah,
and again, BRAZ-TESOL can help. I thought it was a brilliant idea that actually BRAZ-TESOL could step in and do something about it. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. We can definitely think about that. Any other question? I remember someone asking a bit about the open door policy. They weren't very, they didn't understand that quite well.
Yeah, I think I clarified, but yeah, basically it would be managers, coordinators actually being available to teachers beyond the problem solving. You know, I have a complaint, so I go and talk to you. Yeah, I have a timetable. I want you to take an extra group or an extra student. I come and talk to you. And that's the only moment I talk to you. Just like the manager I mentioned 20 years ago, I saw him rarely. The only time I had a conversation with him was when I was in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, have this opportunity before a crisis gets too big, right?
Absolutely. And of course, a manager by spending time with other employees, including teachers, gets to know a little bit about those people and see their humanity and recognize them. You know, they have kids. I know that teacher X has a couple of kids. I know that one is going to have a few health problems. So that makes me more attuned to the needs of the group, yeah? And I think that Diane has a comment there about addressing things that many coordinators or managers pretend don't exist. You know, I think it's really scary to address it. It's really hard because what you do, because once you open the floodgates, seriously, you get lots of coming into you and it can be really difficult to cope with. You know, I had that. I had an awful lot of comments and questions and people coming to talk to me about the individual issues that they were going through. And that is hard to cope with. You know, you do need to have a policy in mind before you start that, because otherwise it's going to be very, very hard. So I think it's the pretense is there for protection and fear, not because they don't actually know it exists. Yeah, they recognize it's a problem. And that's why I'm suggesting, Ruth, that groups like BRAZ-TESOL, in my opinion, should be more advocacy groups in addition to being developmental groups. And that's why, because what is it, what is it, the phrase? I can't remember now, together and stronger? Yeah, we're stronger together. I can't remember the
Yeah,
phrase.
we're stronger
I think
together.
something like that. Yeah.
Dennis,
There is a question, yeah,
Okay.
in the Q&A
Hmm.
box.
Okay.
One of them, the first is dealing with difficult groups when you have no support, what to do?
Then you can find your support. Who are your best immediate support that you have? These are the teachers that you work with, yes? Now, the problem is if you don't have the space and the time like a teacher's room to actually do that, perhaps you need to be finding other ways, like creating your own support group within the community across schools. But if your manager is not supporting you, I think maybe there are two things you should be doing. The first is you should be asking for that support, because at least then you know what you're dealing with. If that manager is not offering you any help or support and you've asked, then you know that's the situation. It could be that if you don't ask, the manager doesn't know anything at all about it. Yeah. Okay. But I think your best resource is the teachers around you, because everybody has had difficult groups. Everybody has difficult groups, and it can make you really suffer. I remember the very first year of teaching here in Brazil, I was a bit like the teacher I mentioned on Sunday night. I didn't end up crying every Sunday night, but I ended up getting really stressed. I was like, my God, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'm going to face those groups of horrible monsters. Yeah, they weren't horrible monsters. I just didn't have very good techniques at coping with them. Yeah, I was really a newbie teacher. But then over time, talking to my colleagues, talking to my friends, I began to get the strategies and the ideas from them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess something you mentioned is very important. Yeah, letting other people know about your problems, right? Don't keep them to yourself. Try and share them with as many people as possible, right? So that are aware can probably help you. Another question here. Thank you, Dennis. Dennis, I have just started a personal development group for teachers. How do you see the fact that we teachers invest so much on hard skills that we eventually forget to invest on more soft skills and mental health?
When you think about your CV and you're trying to get a job, when people look at your hard skills, they're probably more interested right now in those than in your soft skills and your understanding of mental health. It's wrong, of course it's wrong, but perhaps that's why we need to be more open about the fact that these are really, really important skills, and that, you know, stress exists in the workplace, in order to make those things stand out more in our curricula, in our skill set. Because then it's also very easy, you know, it's much easier to learn how to do drilling, for example, than it is to think about how you approach somebody who comes to you with serious issues. It's much scarier. It engages us emotionally when somebody comes to us and they have certain problems like illness in the family, they're having a breakdown. But you know, a hard skill is kind of separate from us. It doesn't really affect us personally. So again, it's all about how we see it ourselves, I think.
Yeah, think about your own coping mechanisms, right? What in advance in order to cope with hard times.
Absolutely. And I think events like this, for example, are ways to work, you know, forums for people to share their ideas is the start of feeling supported. Yeah. And if there are more webinars or more sessions about well-being, the more it will become open and the more people will treat it equally with the hard skills.
For sure. Another question was not really a question, but Christiane says, it seems sometimes that we teachers try to solve our problems while managers just want solutions. I wonder if there's a coordinator among us tonight.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I mean, let's say we have a path between A and Z. I'm not going to say Z, and A and Z, okay? Perhaps the manager at that time wants the Z, but there's a whole alphabet in between that is a very complex alphabet. Yeah. And we perhaps on the front line, when we see our students with specific issues, or we have specific issues with students, we want to work our way around it. Whereas the manager, perhaps, if they're the wrong kind of manager, they're just thinking about the complaint they had, rather than exploring and resolving the issue. I don't really understand the question there about how about when managers don't respect your personal privacy?
Yeah, my guess is I read some other comments there. There is a general complaint about managers in this sense. And my guess is that that's exactly why you decided to talk about the role of schools as well in well-being, because it's not just the role of the teacher themselves, but the school to be supportive and understand that teachers are humans, because we are, despite of what parents and students think sometimes. So I think it's this idea of how can the school and the managers be more supportive, and if they are not, if there is not this open door policy, how we politely maybe talk to them about it.
I guess maybe there's I just had an idea about what that might mean. Whoever wrote it, if you could confirm it, would be good. There is a fine balance, isn't there, between talking about issues that affect your performance, affect your needs in the workplace, and of course things that you want to keep for yourself, things that are very private, and you have a right to personal privacy. You have the right to give what you decide to give. As long as you recognize, I think, that if something is affecting your performance, then perhaps you need to tell the manager at least a little bit about it. But of course, they shouldn't be demanding every little intricate detail about that aspect of your problem, yeah? Because that then is infringing on your personal privacy, I think. So it's about the limits between the private and the public, and when those two things mix.
Yeah, because we hear people saying, yeah, leave your problems out the door. Yeah, that's true for, I think, for many professional environments, but for teachers that can be a bit tricky, right? Because we're dealing with people all the time, and we sometimes can hide emotions, and we have to face that. But let's not forget that managers and coordinators, they are human as well, okay, people?
We are, first and foremost.
Right? So I think it's a matter of talking, and I think words can go a long way, yeah, in this sense, because sometimes we are frustrated and we don't share, and the other person has no way of knowing you're feeling that way. So it's a two-way street as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think but the manager admitting that they have feelings and emotions is also a very, very important thing, as long as they don't let those emotions decide the way they're going to work with a certain teacher, yes. But the teachers need to know that managers are human, and managers need to know that teachers are human. We need to embrace our humanity.
Indeed.
Yeah, Julia, we do. We take our problems home. I'm just seeing a few comments here. So I know Julia said that we as teachers also bring students' problems home, not only ours. So yeah, we're caring, we're asking, we're inquiring about the well-being of the students. Some of them tell you some really profound, sometimes shocking things about their lives. And it's very hard not to take that on board and take it with you, because that's what being human is about, yeah? And of course, so you need to think about how you protect is not the right word, but how you take those and how you cope with it, and don't let it kind of settle within you forever. Yeah. And knowing that you have limits, and there are things that you can do and there are things that you can't do. And as long as you know that you're trying your best, then that's probably the most important thing.
Someone asked here some tips for maintaining this well-being for more time. I guess you've given some, but are there any?
Yeah, no, it is all about, because it's not about the now, it's not about the crisis you're in, because that requires a different answer, but about developing the skills. And I think in the links and some of the references I have at the end of my slides, you'll be able to follow those up, yeah? Because you need to develop them. It's like training, stamina training, yeah? You're not going to go to the gym and lift 120 kilos on the first day there, are you? You're going to start, if you're like weak like me, you're going to start with 5 kilos and build it up, yeah? Same thing for well-being. You need to work on it, you need to build it up step by step, absolutely. And so, yeah, if you look in the references of the presentation, you'll find some ideas.
Final question here, guys, because sorry, we won't have more time. Thank you, Dennis, for your answers. Last one. Do you agree that teachers should look for jobs at schools owned by teachers? since these tend to be more focused on actual teaching?
That's a really hard question. I mean, I have a dream that all schools should be cooperatives, but you know, I think maybe that's a bit of a pipe dream. Not necessarily, because, but if a manager or an owner understands deeply about the process of running a real proper school and taking care of the needs of students and teachers, I think that's valid. But of course, people who have experience in teaching understand what others are going through. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
There is a very interesting question on the chat, if you could read, from Carolina.
Finland.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I got lost. Would you like to read, Clarissa, please?
Yeah, okay, no problem. In Finland, only 2% of students go to private schools. There is no such thing as EFL schools from what I've read. Quality education for all is a premise. Their mindset is learner-centered. Teachers are valued, qualified, and well-paid. How could we humanize education in Brazil, in your opinion, and reach their standard?
If we had another 2 hours, perhaps we could start the conversation, but I think that's a really hard question. I mean, the answer partly is in the question. Teachers are valued, qualified, and well paid, but also curricula is integrated and holistic and recognizes that learning is joined and not something that is in separate strands. But we all know the issues of education in Brazil, and they're long-standing, and it's probably going to be quite a long time before we resolve them, but that doesn't mean we don't try, yeah?
Now I have a question, Dennis. Do you think it has to do with culture?
I always find those kind of questions very uncomfortable because, you know, I'm not qualified, just because I'm from another culture doesn't mean I'm necessarily qualified to analyze.
Yeah, but you live here for a long time. It's
no,
good
because
to
you go
have
to any,
a
you go
different
to any
perspective.
No, you go to any country and there are language schools, and there are good language schools, and there are bad language schools. There are good managers, there are bad managers, because basically we are human, yeah? And so some humans are less enlightened than others. So I think it's really about that. And I wouldn't like to paint Brazil in that light, because I just don't think it's true. Where did I learn to be the best teacher I could be? In Brazil. Yes. I did a crappy CELTA in 2001. Before that, you know, I was something else. As I said, I worked in computational linguistics and cognitive science. So it's Brazil that's taught me to be the teacher I am today, which I kind of hope is okay, yeah, as a teacher. So there's no way I'm ever going to say that Brazil, it's a cultural issue with Brazil, yeah. I think and most cultures are very, very unwilling to discuss mental health issues, especially. And there are very few countries that actually face up to them. We all want to pretend we're strong. We all want to hide these shameful secrets in the shadows.
Yeah, some people are even crying. Don't cry, Marcia. We're here for you.
But actually, crying is good. It's all right. You can cry. Crying is good for you.
True that. Wait for the webinar to finish.
Otherwise, you won't be able to fill in the form for the prizes if you're crying too much. Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you very much again. Okay. Thank you indeed. It was very brave of you.
Thank you very much.
I think Carolina's question could be another video that we planned with André. We can plan one with Dennis, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, could do. I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, this theme is very important nowadays, and you have much to share with us, Dennis. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you. So people, to wrap up our amazing webinar, our amazing evening, we're going to raffle these amazing gifts for you. Okay, so what's going to happen now is that we're going to share with you a link to a form, okay, because we need your names in a form in order to raffle, yeah, in the proper way. So this is the link. We are also going to post it in the chat room, okay? And we are going to give you a couple of minutes to fill it out. And please do so, because this information is also important for the issuing of certificates. It takes like a minute and a half. So please do it now so we can begin our raffle. So we're gonna give you a couple minutes, guys. Please do it right now.
People are fast, 45 already. 54, 6.
The link is on the screen, guys, in case you missed it in the chat room.
Let's see, 104 people, and we have 76 and 77.
How many, Gabi? Sorry?
80.
Oh, we're almost there. Great.
Yeah.
One more minute, people.
$81, 2, 'I think my dog wants to participate in the raffle.
Yeah, it's Gabi's dog, not mine. Could be. She was barking before. Gabi is a newly dog's mom, right, Gabi?
Yes, she's 3 months old. Still peeing around the apartment. 89.
Okay, so I'm gonna post the link here in the chat box again. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and Gabi will share hers because she will do the raffle live, people, live.
Okay, we have 90 people here. And I do have a lot of kids around too. Okay, let me get everybody's names out. 90, we had 93. Nina was the last one.
Yes, we're going to share, sorry, just answering a question in the chat box. Yes, we're going to share the link privately with BRAZ-TESOL members, okay? The YouTube link, the link to the video on YouTube.
Okay, let me share my screen now. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
All right, so first prize is a set of posters of your choice. So you can get in touch with Thais and then say what you prefer. You know, there's vocabulary and grammar and many things. Oh, just before we start, I'm not a lucky person, but in case you are and your name comes up twice or 3 times, please, I'm gonna draw again, okay? Okay, let me share the drawing page now. Just a second, let me see. Oh, we have 2 more. Carmen, you did it. Our former president. Okay.
Gabi, we can only see the PowerPoint.
Yeah, the PowerPoint. Yes, I know. I'm just putting
Okay.
all the names here. Okay, Bruno, you got lucky. I saw your name before I did the thing. Okay, so new share. Sorting online. Can you see it now?
Yay, good
Yes.
luck, people.
Yes, let's see who's gonna get it. And the winner is Rodrigo da Luz Bonin. Congratulations.
Ooh.
Congratulations, Rodrigo. Let me just check it. All right, so next prize is
All those jewelry there.
yeah, well, this is for Cultura Inglesa Curitiba. So, you know, if you're not from Curitiba, you can let us know and then we can draw it again. So it's a 50% discount for a TKT exam. And oh, I cannot see the chat now. So if someone says anything.
Oh, they're talking about the Vivara.
Oh,
I would like to raffle that as well, but then we would be included, right?
was the last thing I bought, you know, for Mother's Day. So it keeps showing up.
Oh, I wish it was a mother.
Yeah, because you know when the coronavirus started, I went there and I stayed there for 2 months. You know, with all
3
my
kids.
Yes. So I didn't have to
Okay,
buy
she deserves it. She deserves it, indeed.
Yeah. All right, let me go back to. Can you see the sorteador again?
Yes, so now we are
So
50% off a TKT fee
yeah,
at Cultura Inglesa Curitiba.
Curitiba. Let's see, and the winner is Márcio Conceição Pantoja. Are you from Curitiba, Márcio?
He's from São Paulo, right?
He's from São Paulo. Should we?
Márcio, would you like to say?
I can.
Well, he can come to Curitiba and visit us.
But I'm pretty sure Márcio already has all his TKT
Can we try like 5?
Okay, so he says, I'm not from Curitiba, you can give to Ana Julia. She lives there.
Oh, okay, nice, okay.
Okay, Ana Julia.
We have something here on the chat. Really? I would love
Ana
if he
Julia
comes.
Calegari, okay.
I think you should come, Mark.
Nice gift, Ana Julia.
Nice to have friends like that.
Yes. Let's see. Now, next one is for this webinar is tomorrow. Okay, it's a language brush-up day. So Rodrigo and Stefan, they kindly gave us one registration, and let's see who is the lucky person to get it. Good luck, everybody. Laura Correia Abreu. Laura, congratulations. Is Laura still there? I cannot see the chat. Is Laura happy?
Yes, she said she's here and she's super happy.
Okay, good. Now we're gonna have 5 lucky winners, okay? A página has given us 5 gift cards for 70 reais. If you do get this, you have to use it by the end of July, and you do need to register on their page, okay? And when you win, we're gonna send you a private message here in the chat with your code, okay, to use it on the website. All right, let's see now the 5 lucky people. Good luck, everybody. Wagner, Lilian, Marcelo, Juliana, and Suellen. Congratulations. Stay here, okay, because we have to get in touch with you, send you a private message with the codes.
Yes, so stay here just a couple of minutes more and we'll...
Yes, I'm gonna send you now. So congratulations, everybody that were lucky. And if you were not lucky, don't worry, because we also have some special surprises for you. Jordana, I'll give you the word and the screen.
Okay. I'm getting there. Thank you so much, Gabi. Thank you. Okay. So we've raffled all of these presents. Congratulations to all the winners. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Thanks. Thanks to our sponsors again. Thanks to huge thanks to André, Luis. My God, who is Luis? André, Dennis, to all the attendees who decided to be here with us this Friday evening. Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for all your contributions. And the surprises are, because we've got 2, are some vouchers for everyone, yeah? So the first voucher is from a Página Livrarias. You have the code there. It entitles you to 15% discount on all purchases there. Don't worry about writing down the code, because we're actually gonna send these to all attendees via email on Monday, okay? So that's one treat. And the other is a voucher from SBS as well, which entitles you to 10% discount on their website. So you can use either, you can use both, hope you do, yeah? So again, people, thank you so much for being here. Please follow us, stay in touch, any questions, anything we can help you with, we are there. So on behalf of the board, yeah, thank you very much and see you next time. The winners
stay. Yes, Wagner have already sent you, but the others stay. I'm getting
so thank you so very much, guys.
Thank you.
Hope to see you around soon.
Thank you, everyone. It was amazing. Thank you.